that. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, or welcome, and thank you for coming this evening. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to read the Danvers Public Schools mission statement. Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television. Is anyone in the audience recording tonight's proceedings? Okay, very good. Thank you. So, items of interest to the superintendent, school committee, or community?
Thank you. So from the superintendent, we have 2 items this evening under items of interest. And first, I would like to welcome Rita Ward, our principal at Thorpe School, who would like to lead a recognition for one of our staff members, and also ask our fire chief to also join her. Thank you. And Mr. Connor Dombowski, thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to be here tonight to acknowledge the reaction of one of our teacher aides at Thorpe School, who second day of school, down in the lunchroom, Connor was a burrito. His experience, and he was choking. He was very serious, and her reaction was immediate. It was exactly what anyone would want. Mother of 4, a wonderful woman, and we just want to thank her and acknowledge your heroism, and we appreciate what you did. And the Dombowski family, so appreciative they wanted public recognition, and we just happen to be here tonight. Mine, we especially want to thank you as a patient.
Great. Mom, would you like to take a picture up here? Sure. Come on up. And maybe Chief Iborn could say a few words in a moment after the picture. Thank you. All right. I'm sure if we said actually Marsha's name, right? So. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for inviting me here, and thank you so much for your obviously your quick actions prevented what could have been a much more tragic event. And it's good to see you're doing well. And see those burritos up in your butternut. Usually I come here to this meeting to recognize the winners of the drawing contest for the National Awareness Calendar this year. Here to first say thank you to you. I mean, and I have to ask, do you have any formal training at all?
I mean, it's CPR trained, but
Okay, great.
I have 4 kids, I've done it a couple times.
Well, thank you very much for stepping up and taking that action. It's wonderful when people do that. Some people are afraid to. And I applaud your actions. That's awesome. It's interesting that this week is Fire Prevention Week. While this particular action is more of a safety issue, with fire prevention, we also try to tie in safety, especially home safety, and it's great to see people taking some of the lessons that we put out into the community seriously. Everybody here I know is going to check the batteries in the smoke detectors like during time for daylight savings time and all of that. This community has a very strong fire prevention program in the schools. We have the SAFE program, which Captain Brooks, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, he's our SAFE educator and coordinator for the program. He goes to every one of the elementary schools. I'm sure some of you folks have seen Captain Brooks. He usually brings the SAFE trailer with him, puts on a presentation and does a great job of teaching home safety, a little bit of first aid here and there. And it's good to see that these things are getting out in the community. And I thank you for the opportunity to do that. It makes our whole community safer. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Marsha, on behalf of the Danvers Public Schools, thank you so much. It's always wonderful to visit to Thorpe School and see Marsha's smiling face, greeting me there also in her work with our children and now especially with Connor. So thank you. Thank you to the Dembowski family for asking to come this evening, and thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, Fire Chief.
And on behalf of the school committee as well, Masha, thank you so much for doing the heroicness of you, but thank you so much for it.
Thank you. Good. And I met with most of the people that are here tonight as visitors to talk about the piece. That after each presentation, it really is okay as part of what we do at our school committee meetings to keep transitioning to the pieces. So thank you again to Masha and the Nabowski family and to our fire chief. Thank you so much. Great. So that's all from the superintendent for this evening.
Anything from the school committee?
Nope. Nope.
The community? All set? Okay.
I was going to say, may I add one more piece when I go back to it? In recognition for the Citizens Academy. So this is a new program that the town has, and I believe the fire department has their evening, and we've had our evening. It was a great evening to spend with 20 members of our school community, sharing about what happens in the Danvers Public Schools. So that's a program this fall for a number of weeks to learn all about the town.
Right, and that was run by the town. You could sign up. They took 20 participants. I believe they plan on doing it again next year. So if you're interested in learning about the different departments in the town, it is a great opportunity to do that. And I'm sure the town website, as well as their social media, will put out more information next year for that as well. Thank you.
And we had a number of teachers that came that evening with us. Mary Beth was able to be there with us also, but a number of teachers that came to share what they do every single day with our children in our classrooms. So thank you.
Hands-on learning.
Yes. Great.
Okay, very good. Information from the student representative.
Hello.
Hi, Cynthia.
Max couldn't be here tonight, and he's very upset about it. That he had some athletic interventions going on, so he couldn't be here tonight. But I will start, and we're going to start with Great Oak. So they had a very successful first month there, and each day they begin with the time dedicated to developing the student's social-emotional learning. The students are practicing mindfulness, breathing techniques, and calming strategies, and their fifth graders have talked about themes of diversity and respect and created a quilt celebrating their uniqueness. The specialist teachers, including special education and reading teachers, are joining classes each morning to be a part of the classroom community. As well, the reading workshops are well underway in all the classrooms. Students are reading books at their just right level and are practicing reading strategies with their teachers. Their kindergartners are looking for sight words in their book, and while the first and second graders are working to increase their reading stamina, the older students are exploring themes, how characters change, and use text evidence to support their ideas. And then we have Highlands, and they're also working on their social-emotional learning. Time is up, and they are running on a daily basis with all of their specialists and support staff spread out. So all of the classrooms have multiple adults supporting their students and to help build a classroom community. Students are learning many techniques, some of which include practicing mindfulness, just like in Great Oak, and calming strategies. And they have their writing workshop in full swing in all of their classrooms. The students in the first grade are working on taking small moments and turning them into narratives, while the fourth graders are also using the narrative genre to write realistic fiction stories. And at Riverside, the specialists are incorporating units, again with the social-emotional learning across all grades. It's really great to see this come through all the schools. For instance, during the PE classes, physical education, the first and second graders are working on partner play and cooperative games, while the older students are working with the trike units, and they will be learning the benefits of a healthy lifestyle, and even Miss Powers got on a trike and she went riding with the fourth graders. I'm jealous. In music, the older learners are composing with word chains, using words that describe how they can have a welcoming atmosphere in the music room. In the art classes, the students are exploring with lines, shapes, patterns, and colors using different mediums. While finally, in the library and media, students are offered a thematic makerspace lesson. Recently, the younger grades read about animal habitats. Following this, the students built animal habitats using Legos and various materials. Students problem solved, worked on coping skills, communicated, and persevered, as well as used their imagination. And then at Smith, thanks to the generosity of the Smith Pack, the third grade team at Smith will be partnering with Change is Simple throughout the school year. The mission of the Change is Simple is to instill lifelong social and environmental responsibility through the experimental learning that inspires action for healthy people, planet, and community. Sounds wonderful. So that's good. I'm glad we have that coming on. Through hands-on workshops in the classroom, third graders will focus on how as a community impacts the whole community. So what the community can do to impact the community. With the construction taking place at Smith, they will be looking at how the ecosystem is affected. And in kindergarten at Smith, the students have been introduced to the zones of regulation during the social emotional learning time, and they are learning about the green, blue, yellow, and red zones. They will use these zones to identify their feelings and learn about self-awareness. At Thorpe, they had a very successful kindergarten to grade 5 open house on the 24th of September. Many families were able to attend and visit their children's classrooms and learn about this year's curriculum. In addition, classroom teachers were able to share with them the revised elementary schedules and provide them with details on the inclusion of the SEL and intervention blocks into the daily schedule for the first time. The 5th graders were very excited for the opportunity to spend a day at the Project Adventure on Thursday, October 24th. It's a unique experience for the students as they learn the importance of personal and group responsibility, collaboration, problem solving, and the respect for oneself and others. And then at Holton Richmond, they held their Project Hawk program kickoff assemblies, and the students learned about the goals of the programs and themes for the year. They were also treated to a fun flash mob. I don't know any other school district that does that. We're pretty cool. And it was put on by the faculty. Again, pretty cool. In October, the Project Hawk meeting, the groups discussed the importance of having a go-to adult in the school. So every student in HRMS identified one adult that they could go to if they wanted to report some information about bullying or other problems. The adults also received a notice, their adults at home received a notice telling them that about the students who have been identified for this important role. And the 6th grade art students visited the Peabody Essex Museum for a field trip recently, and many clubs and activities have begun meeting, including engineering club, sewing club, student council, Hawk News, Danvers Cares, youth leaders, and the school store. And then at DHS, we are very excited about the new opportunities for the students here through engaging in project-based courses. For example, we are offering a number of new 12th grade English classes, including Evolution of a Hero, Project Citizen, Page to Stage. So those are some cool classes. I have a lot of people, some of my friends are in those classes, and it's really kind of cool to see the English being shaken up a little bit. And we've also added some additional Project Lead the Way courses in biomedical science and in computer science. And our physical education and health departments have also added new courses, including the Mindful Teen, which focuses on mindfulness and building social-emotional learning competencies for our students. In addition, we have a course on first responders, where students have the opportunity to learn about the field and earn their CPR and first aid certifications. Those are all the activities.
Very good. Thank you very much. A lot of things going on, a lot of great things.
A lot of positive movements.
Excellent. Thank you, Cynthia. Information from the superintendent.
Thank you. This evening, we begin with our Danvers Pride presentations, and I would like to welcome the Great Oak Elementary School and ask our principal, Martha Jankaitis, to come up and begin with her students. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. I am Martha Jankaitis, the principal of Great Oak, and I have here with me some tonight. During their social emotional learning time, the fifth graders read the book called The Color of Us, which emphasizes the themes of respect and acceptance. Students were encouraged to think of ways that we are all similar and ways that we are different, and how our experiences make us all unique. Students talked about their family holidays and traditions, as well as their cultural backgrounds. Our individuality is to be celebrated, as is our commitment to creating a welcoming community at Great Oak. The students then created a diversity quilt, which celebrates each person's uniqueness. The quilt is on display in our fifth grade hallway as a reminder that we are all individuals who are part of a caring community. The fifth graders here tonight will proudly share their quilt squares and talk about what respect looks like at Great Oak.
Hi, my name is Agnes Alcinician, and I will be sharing my diversity quilt I made at school. So, something that I would like to share with you is that I can speak two different languages besides English. I can speak Russian and Lithuanian. This is the Lithuanian flag, and this is the Ukrainian flag, but I can't speak Ukrainian because that's a whole different language, but it sounds like How do you say hi in Lithuanian? Hi, which is in English. Привет, which is in Russian. And you can say привет. You can write it in with English letters, and you can write it with Russian letters. And labas, which is in Lithuanian. And something that makes me unique is that sometimes every year my grandmothers from both countries come, and my grandmother that is from Lithuania is actually sitting in the audience next to my mom. Hi, my name is Victoria Schofield, and something that makes my family is that we always get our Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. We always go to Salem and see Hocus Pocus, and we always go to my aunt's house on Christmas Day. All these things make me unique.
Thank you.
My name is Alexa Smith, and I'm Swedish and Mexican. Some of the traditions I have are I always get my Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. I always go camping during the summer. I always go apple picking, and I always visit my cousins at least once a year. Two things that make me unique are I was born in Japan because my dad was stationed there. Also, I have 4 pets: a dog named Sweetie, 2 cats named Hershey and Missy, and a bunny named Julie.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kayla McKinnon. One of the traditions my family celebrates is Christmas. The tradition at my dad's house is to get a face paint. I get to hang some Christmas movie ornaments and an ornament with a K on it. At my mom's house, our tradition is to go and pick out a real tree. I get to hang up my baby's first Christmas ornament and homemade ornaments. During Christmas time, I get to bake cookies and brownies with my mom. My family loves to go swimming. We go swimming at the pool on the beach with my granny, and swim in the pool at my brother's house. At my dad's house, we have Friday pizza night every Friday with my grandparents and my great-grandmother. My mom's grandfather has his own recipe to make homemade pizza. This year, I got to help him mix the dough that we used to make pizza. It was delicious. My family is special because we have so many traditions.
Hi, my name is Jules Richards. I go snowboarding every winter at this mountain in Vermont. Me, my dad, and a little bit of my stepmother's family go to Disney every year. I have 3 dogs. I have 2 at my mom's house and 1 at my brother's. I love my family because we are all unique in our own ways. One holiday we celebrate is Christmas. My parents are divorced, so they switch off having me and my brother during the Christmas. I'm 50% Irish, and the rest of my ancestry I don't.
Thank you.
Kalimera, which means good morning. Something that makes me unique is that I have the privilege to celebrate Greek and American holidays.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcus Quinlan. A holiday that my family celebrates is Christmas. On Christmas vacation, we go to my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania. On Christmas morning, we wait until everyone's awake to open our presents. Another holiday we celebrate is Chinese New Year. On Chinese New Year, my mom puts out a flower special for Chinese New Year, and she passes out red envelopes to me and my brother. Something that makes me unique is that I'm half Vietnamese and half American. There's one final piece that the students would like to share with you, so I'm going to ask them to kind of gather around in front so that you'll be able to see them. And this is an acrostic poem that they created to talk about what respect looks like at Great Oak.
R is for remember, E is for everyone, S is for special, P is for personality, E is for equality, C is for connecting, T is for together.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. That was awesome and very informative. Do we have any questions from the school committee? Arthur?
No questions, just a great presentation, guys, and you are definitely all unique. So thanks for coming, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. You guys did a fantastic job. Almost all of you talked about Christmas. Only 2.5 months to go, and we'll be there. So great job.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you very much. Terrific.
Yeah, you guys are great, and you have personality in spades when you see that. And, just wonderful to see you celebrating our differences in the things, the patchwork that makes up this country. So it's wonderful to see that happening in your school.
Very good. I'd love to come and see the quilt sometime. And, you know, we are all different, and showing respect for everyone is great. So thank you very much, and thank you for doing this with the students as well, and all the teachers. So thank you.
Thank you to our 5th graders. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for sharing. Very special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
So I think we can see the theme that we already have started for this evening with our social emotional and how important that is as a lifelong skill for our children. Great. So our administrators will move forward. Thank you. So for this evening, we do have one more presentation involving students, and we will move from elementary to high school. And this is the month that we have our Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, our Academic Excellence Award. And I would like to ask Nikki Lamb to come up, and also for Dr. Colombino. Dr. Colombino is going to speak about her accomplishments, and then we'll probably have both of them come this way, and we'll do the picture and the award, and that way her parents can take some pictures also. Okay, to set the context for Dr. Colombino, this award does come from the Association of School Superintendents in Massachusetts, and it is an award that, as an association, looking at academic excellence, and it is given to a student in a high school, in each of our high schools, that have distinguished themselves in the pursuit of academic excellence and actually overall excellence during their high school career. So I'd like to ask Dr. Colombino to speak about Nikki.
So Nikki is the kind of student that we always want to have at Danvers High School. We have so many of them. She's the type of student in person that makes hard work every single day, every minute look effortless. So it's just every time you meet her, she has a smile on her face. It doesn't seem like there's any problem behind that and the amount of work she puts in every day during schoolwork, taking a really rigorous coursework, multiple AP classes, a member of the National Honor Society. And this week she also went to celebrate being the Harvard Book Award recipient for Danvers High School last year, as well as the Chief Junior Marshal. And I have a funny feeling that this won't be the only time that I'll be up here introducing Nikki in the months to come. So with that, I'd just like to introduce Nikki. Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Nikki. Opportunity for a picture. This is the plaque that will be displayed at Danvers High School. Always that will be there. That's it. This is your
If you want to come closer, you can. Did you want to come up closer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure.
No, even closer than
you-
that.
Hey,
Come
you
on.
want-
You can be in the picture if you want.
Yeah.
We have no place to be. It's just on.
Excellent.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Excellent. Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Nikki.
I haven't seen a real camera for a while.
I know.
That was interesting.
very good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And congratulations, Nikki.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you. So next we'll just take one moment to put the presentation. Yep, Mary's almost there. All right. So October is the time that we have our annual overview of student achievement. It's an opportunity where the state of Massachusetts has released and made public all of the results from MCAS testing last spring. It's also an opportunity for us to take a look at where we are with our goals from our strategic plan, with also high school outcomes with AP and SAT. So we have a lot of data to share with you this evening. And to begin with, what focuses all of our work is our vision statement. We have tried, I think, to refine our vision statement to really hone in on the priorities that we have looking at now through the year 2023. But this year, I'm not going to really read too much to you because we were able to work with Ben Thomas from DCAT and with 4 of our students. And these are students that we're transitioning from one school to a next last year. So we have a 5th grader going into 6th grade, 2 8th graders going into 9th grade. Yes. And we have a graduating senior. So as a senior getting ready to go off to college. And in their words, when we finish up our vision statement, that we say that we want all of our students to achieve their definition of success as they graduate from Danvers High School, they're going to explain to you. So here we go.
My personal definition of success is reaching a challenging goal that you've set for yourself.
Setting goals and achieving them.
Finding things that you like to do and being able to do them well.
I want people to be able to learn from me, and I want to grow from other people.
My time at Halton Lutheran has helped me reach my definition of success because of the faculty that works there. They are really motivated to help students.
Motivate me and help me to achieve my goals, and sometimes even unknowingly set goals for me. I think that an open learning system is really important, so I can ask questions and somebody else can answer except the teacher that might know.
So feeling really emotionally supported, but also supported in my classroom, making sure that I understand everything is really awesome. The Danvers Public Schools do an awesome job of that. I work collaboratively in school through my extracurricular activities, such as a cappella. I was in the all-female group Ingrid Sound, and also through theater. We work in groups, whether it be to make models or science experiments and stuff like that.
We have worked together a lot over the past year. It's been really fun talking with other people and collaborating.
In my pursuit of success, a challenge I face is definitely stress. I'm a very stressed out person. But luckily, through my time with the Danvers Public Schools, I've been given the tools either through teachers or different types so I can continue working and doing everything.
Definitely balancing extracurriculars, sports, and academics all in one. Overcame that by really putting in all the hours for schoolwork and maintaining 100% effort.
To do good work on the spring concert, I had to realize that I had to put as much effort as the chorus teacher does, because in the end, the chorus is the one who sings. I remember a time where I was working with a group and we had a debate. Our group lost, unfortunately, but it taught me how to take failure and take it into account and use it so I don't make the same mistakes again.
My proudest achievement in my time at Danvers was leading the student walkout against gun violence. I got to work with a really great group of students and planning it, and it really gave me a lot of awesome leadership experience. It was just nothing tops that for me.
Proudest achievement was graduating, because even though basically every 8th grader graduated, it was a transition from middle school to high school, and I did everything I had to do and maybe even more.
This year I earned the NSAA award from the school faculty. It is given to students who show leadership qualities and always put in 100% effort. It felt really good to earn that this year.
I definitely feel better prepared to find success in my own way. I find myself looking back on all the different lessons I learned, whether that be actual lessons on like math and English and stuff, but also just what my teachers have taught me and what I've learned through working collaboratively with other students and stuff like that. I really feel well prepared to go out and face the real world.
I do feel prepared. I think you just have to put in 100% effort and you can go wherever you want to be.
If you want to do anything in school, you should just go for it. Just look things over, make sure it's not too risky, do it, and you'll probably end up with something good.
I want to look back at my life and know that I have achieved the things I wanted to achieve, and I want to know that I have been successful in life.
Having a good life.
Definitely making sure that I leave my mark, and also just making sure when you're successful, you kind of feel better about a lot of things. You know, when you feel good about doing a project and working on things that you enjoy, then it kind of motivates you to do it again.
My future motivates me to be successful, because if I am successful now, I can be successful tomorrow.
Thank you. So again, we'd like to thank Ben Thomas, our 4 students who, when they were asked, they readily said, yes, we would do this. They gave up some time in their summer to be interviewed at DCAT. Thank you to our principals who helped to facilitate. I learned the word about B-roll, some of the images that you see as our students are speaking, to see images from our classrooms and what it is like to be a student in the Danvers Public Schools today in 2019. So with that, we will get to the numbers now and looking at our data. And Mary Wormers, as our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, will bring us through this data. And we look forward to our questions and discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Great. So, good evening. So I'm here to talk about the student achievement data that we have that's defining success of our students in Danvers. And we're going to start with the high school data and work our way down through the elementary school. And then end the presentation with the accountability system and our strategic plan goals. So that's kind of where we're at. So there's a lot, as Lisa said, there's lots of numbers and data that exists in this presentation. So I'll try to kind of give a quick overview of that data, and then you can look at it and formulate any kind of questions you might have. So the first one we're starting with is AP data. We saw our student that was one that took multiple APs, and you can see from this slide that last year we had 240 students taking the AP exam with 494 tests being taken, AP tests being taken. So that was a lot of AP tests. And with that, 174 of those students scored a qualifying score of 3 or above. That was about 72.5% of the students that took the AP exam. So you can see our data is very steady over the years, and we continue to add more APs and advance coursework. Another program we have is, or data that we have is PSAT and SAT. Danvers is unique in that we actually test all our grade 10 and 11 students in school to take the PSAT. I feel like this is part of their access to higher education, to have students be able to get a feel for and have access to the SAT by taking the PSAT in school. As you can see, the numbers of students that we test, PSAT in 10th grade was 222, and the 11th grade was 215, and then led to 253 students taking the SAT, and that's for last year combined 11 and 12th grade students. So the SAT and PSAT scores that you see are combined math and English scores, and you can see the trend. As they start to take it in 10th grade, they don't have a lot of experience, but as they move up through, you can see as we hit the state average with a similar state average at the SAT. Okay, and then on to MCAS data. That's another set of data that the high school gets. This year was unique because it was the first year of the next generation MCAS data. The 10th grade science took what they call the legacy MCAS. They were not ready for the next generation test, but that will come next year. So we don't have a lot of longitudinal data to show you on this, but we do compare Danvers High to the state in the percent of students meeting and exceeding expectations. And also the Department of Ed asked us to really present average sales scores as well. They feel like that's a more precise statistic to be using. So you'll see throughout the presentation, we'll give you both the percents at the performance levels and the average scale scores. So as you can see, Danvers High is at or close to the average of the state at those scale scores, and their student growth percentile, it falls between the average growth between 40 and 60 SGP. So that's the MCAS for Danvers High School. The next slide you see is very busy, and it has the percent of students on the left achieving at each of the performance levels. The blue being exceeding expectations, the green being meeting expectations, the mustard orange being partially meeting expectations, and then the red not meeting expectations. Again, the state encouraged us. This is actually a slide from the state, and they made it so that we could enter in our own data into the graphics. So they encouraged us to use both the percentiles at each of the performance levels, but then also really to look at the average scale score, because that score can really help you look at improvement over time. And it gives you a better metric when you are comparing different cohorts of kids. So when you look at the 2017 data at grade 3, it's different students than the 2018 scores, and then different students at the 2019. So that's why they, in their reporting webinar this year, they really asked districts to kind of transition to that metric. So that's why we have that busy slide. You also see, though, the changes over 2 years, and that was something that they also highlighted with us with the state data. And they said that any growth over 2 points is a significant growth. So you can see that we do have some significant growth there in some of the grade levels in English language arts. The next slide is the same data, but for mathematics. And again, you can see the percent at exceeding, percent at meeting, partially meeting and not meeting on the left side. And on the right is the average scale score. And you can see here we have more of the growth over the two points, which shows the improvement in the areas of mathematics. So I'll take you down. So that was 3 through 8 data. Now I'm going to take you down into the Holton Richmond data.
Mary, I had a quick question. So what you just said was like grade 3, 2017.
Yep.
Then the 2018, that's a different grade 3.
That's a different, different group of kids.
Okay.
And then the 2019. If you would like, you could go diagonally down from grade 3 in 2017 to grade 4 in 2018 to grade 5 in 2019. You can kind of look at the data.
Instead of reading across.
That's a cohort. That would be a cohort.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
To try to look at that. So the next slide is we're diving into the Holton Richmond MCAS data. This is ELA. And Adam and Ellen presented this data at the early release in October to their to their faculty, and the quote I put on the slide was from their presentation, was that they said we had slow and steady progress, but there's more work to do. So what was great was that they have shown improvement in their scores, and that, as you'll see when we get to the ending slide, the accountability system has actually had the school move off the needing assistance into making progress. So that was something to be proud of, but they all recognize that there's more work to be done at that level. So you see the average scale scores across each year at each grade level. Again, in ELA, you can see that over 2 years there was over 2 points in the grade 6 ELA, but then when you go with just the change from last year to this year, that the grade 7 and 8 also have seen gains. And then at the bottom, I wanted you to have a reference of how they're doing compared to the state in the average scale score. And so again, there we do have some more work to do to get up to the state average with the scale scores. So we show the math and science data, the same thing. The 2-point change is what we look in the top chart. We see that in the 6th grade again. And then in 7th grade, we see a change from the 1 year. And then 8th grade, they're still, they've done a point gain over time, but still working to show a larger gain. And again, this is some of the cohorts that have gone over time. So the 8th grade, if you look at the 8th grade cohort, you can see there's improvement from 2017 at 489.5 all the way to 493.8 in this past year as 8th graders. So there is a gain in the cohort, but there isn't gain over time at that grade level.
Mary, can I just ask a question? I'm trying to make sure I'm comparing the numbers properly. So if you look at that first slide you showed on ELA, for example, grade 8.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 slides before that one.
Okay.
In 2017, it was 496.7, 492.5, and 495.7 going across. Are those numbers supposed to be the same?
Sorry. Okay.
Which one?
Okay, yep.
And then, so on that slide that you're looking at right now, are those numbers supposed to be the same for 2017, 18, and 19 in grade 8?
No, you're going to see.
Oh, you know what? I was looking at grade 6 through 8. Never mind. I'm
Okay.
sorry. There. Correct.
Sorry. I know it's a lot of data. And
Yeah, I
it's,
was just looking at the wrong line, and I didn't see the 6 through 8.
Yeah.
I was looking at 8 as the bottom number.
So we also put the grade 8 MCAS data for you on the on the side. Again, this was the first year. Grade 5, and 8 took the new Next Generation Science exam. So there's only 1 year of data for that area. So you can see that at grade 8, we're nearing the state average. We're close to the state average, and in both the average scale score and the percent meeting and exceeding expectations. Then we moved to the elementary school. And again, I put up the average scale scores of each of the elementary schools across at each grade level. So our first slide is English Language Arts, and they show the scale scores at grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. And then I put, for the last column, the state average scale score, so you can compare to how that school's doing against the state, as well as we're doing across each of the schools. On this slide, we have 10 of the 15 actual scores that come in, because there's 5 schools, 3 grade levels, 10 of the 15 that are above the state average, and with 5, close, just slightly below to below the state average on these scale scores. As we move to math, you're going to see the same thing, that has the 5 schools and has the state scale score average. And here you're going to see that there are 12 grade levels or scores here that are above the state average, with only 3 that are below the state average. And then the grade 5 science, again, this was a new test for them this school year, and there's only one that is below, one very close to average and one below that average. So then I went back to our traditional measure, like we used to do percent advanced and proficient, but here for the elementary schools are the percent meeting and exceeding the standards. So it's just a different way to look at the data. It's the same data that plays out with the average scale scores. So this one I gave a comparison of where the district average was and then where the state average is. So all this MCAS data rolls up into an accountability system, which gives it's a system that gives points for how you do in meeting targets that they set for achievement, for growth, for chronic absenteeism, and participation in the MCAS test. And that's grades 3 through 8. And then in grade, at the high school level, they throw in advanced coursework, they throw in graduation rate as well. So this year, in the accountability system, the classification for all our schools was not requiring assistance or intervention. And then the reason for classification, they give you more of a breakdown, was that they were either making moderate progress towards targets, they were making substantial progress towards targets, and then, or they were meeting or exceeding the targets. So those are our different ratings and the percentiles that they achieved to make those ratings. There's a lot more data that you could dig into on the accountability system, but this is just a quick overview of what that data tells us. So what are our, you have all this data. What are our strengths and challenges? So you can really dive in and look at different things, but we really looked at and saw that the average scale scores really improved grades 3 through 8 in math, and for grades 3 through 6 in ELA. We see that the middle school has improvement in math and ELA over the past 2 years, and which leading the school to move out of requiring assistance or intervention. And so that was a nice, improvement to have to be out of that system. The challenges are that we still really have to zero in the achievement of high needs students. Those are students that have diverse learning needs, that are English language learners, and that are economically disadvantaged. So that, again, as we keep working on our instruction and then our FAR cycle data, our formative assessment data, those are students that we have in our mind and really work towards helping improve based on the results of those assessments. Whole enrichment is continuing its progress to reach the average scale scores. They are also working to implement their turnaround plan. Sorry, this one off the screen. I think it's going to take a minute. And then another challenge that's faced by every school in our district is the chronic absenteeism rate. So students are they are absent over 10% of the school year. Does not help us meet our target to what the Department of Ed sets for us. So it keeps us from getting all the points in the accountability system for the chronic absenteeism. So that's something we've been working together on as an AC to kind of start to look at and identify students and work with the families of those students to make sure that they are coming to school, because you need to be in school to be able to do well in school. So those are all things that we're working on. And Danvers High, you can't see it. I don't know why, because everything's plugged in. And I'm just going to try to put my own thing here and see if that helps it. I think it should come on now. All right, forget. We'll go
source
on.
file.
We can all see
Do you
it.
wanna
Oh,
put
there it is.
Oh,
There
you
you
did?
go.
Okay, great.
Yay.
So Danvers High, strengths and challenges. They're at the state average for ELA and math on their first year of the Next Generation MCAS. Danvers High exceeded their target for advanced coursework in the accountability system. So we have 76.6% of students took at least one advanced coursework, and a lot of that is due to the Project Lead the Way program that we've begun to implement over the last couple of years. And then the Danvers High graduation engagement, and dropout rates all met accountability goals set for them. And then the challenges, as I said before, is the chronic absenteeism rate. And that is a challenge, especially at the high school level. And then to really get at those lowest performing students. The accountability gives you rankings on all your kids, and then they also, 50% of it's on all your kids, and 50% of it is on the lowest performing, the lowest 25% of lowest performing students in your school, and see how they've made gains in their achievement and in their growth, their student learning growth, goal growth. So the other thought we had was, as we're starting our strategic plan, is to show you kind of the data that we've had and how we're doing towards making those goals. The goals that you'll see in the column are set for 2023, and we thought we would give you the data from this school year and then also like kind of compare it to the state. So the first goal is by the end of grade 2, 90% of the students will be reading at or above grade level. And this school year, we have we had 69% of the students in the past, in June of 2019, that are reading at grade level, at grade 2. And we were finding that we were setting little benchmarks for ourselves to get to 90%, and we were thinking around, mid 60%, and we found that that's too low because we've made 69%, so we're reworking that goal to say 75% of our second graders will be reading at or above grade level at the end of this school year. The rest is MCAS data, and that's why we have some state comparisons for us. By the end of 5th grade, we had 60% of students will score at meeting and exceeding standards on the grade 5 math MCAS test. When we set all these goals, it was on our first year of the Next Generation MCAS test, and our scores were lower. And so now we've made larger gains than we really had predicted. So grade 5, we are setting for this school year 70% of a goal is 70% of students meeting or exceeding the grade 5 math MCAS test. And we will rework that overall goal for 2023. We still have work to do at the middle school in grade 6 and grade 8. Grade 6 is the reading test. We're at 48%, and we have a goal of 60, so that's an improvement, but we're still marching towards that 60%. The same thing at grade 8. We're actually down a little bit from where we were the year before, as you saw in the earlier slides. So, and again, it's kind of that cohort that was in grade 6 2 years ago that was scored, pretty low as well in that grade. So that score, we're looking to get that up to 60% by 2023. And you can see the grade 10 scores were set with the legacy MCAS. So we had 90% of MCAS students will score meeting exceeding standards on the grade 10 math test. But as you can see with both the Danvers High and the state, that's pretty lofty right now, given the way they set their standards at the state level. So we might need to reconsider those goals for 2023, but we're going to wait a year because the state is still working out its standard setting for math and ELA, and so because this is the first year of the legacy, they may tweak their standard setting for that. So we're going to hold tight right now and then wait for more guidance from the Department of Education. So our next steps. First one is that we're going to be working on the implementation of the HRMS turnaround plan. Just because we moved off the designation doesn't mean that the work that we had planned would stop. We are, as we said, slow and steady progress, but there's still more work to do. So that work is being done and already begun at the middle school. We actually started in the spring of last year and got right off to a good start in September and continued on with that work. We're also continuing with the high-impact teacher teams. We're really working on teachers having that collective efficacy for students and really working hard to look at their curriculum goals, their learning goals that they set for kids, kind of assess them formatively, and then take that action to help kids that aren't meeting those goals together. Tomorrow, we have our first district-wide data meeting, so we will be working on the implementation of this process. We've already started in September, but we're going to work to take that all of our fire cycle work and the differentiating of our instruction for students to another level. And we're looking forward to working with the teachers on that tomorrow to start tomorrow. A third thing we're doing is we're involved with the Essex County Learning Community Grant, as you know, and they've given us a workshop series in Universal Design for Learning. We when the new frameworks came out back in 2011, we worked on the UDL framework, and now we're revisiting it this year with the ECLC, and it's going to really help us with that, taking that firm action and really learning how to differentiate the instruction so we're meeting the needs for all kids. And then finally, we're really working on aligning our curriculum with the priority standards, especially those priority standards that are tested by the MCAS. That gives us an indication of what Massachusetts is valuing by what they're testing. And we will use those priority standards for developing those formative assessments and use them in the FAR cycle. So that's our work for the year, and that's a very dry presentation.
Thank you, Mary. So this evening we have all of our administrators, Mary, Keith, and myself to answer any questions that you have.
All right. Who wants to go first, Eric?
Sure. First, just a clarifying couple of questions. On the PSAT and SAT data, there is a footnote at the bottom of the page that says DHS tests all 10 and 11, grade 10 and 11 students in school to provide access to college entrance testing, and that this isn't the case with high schools across the state. Okay, so my understanding is that that's all students get to take the PSAT, right, as part of our process. But the SAT is still a self-selecting group, correct? Okay.
Yes, it is. And we're not allowed to give the SAT during the school day.
Sure.
Yeah, they have to go to testing.
Okay. But not every Danvers High student takes the SAT anyway. Okay.
I feel that by providing them experiences with the PSAT,
Sure.
grade 10 and 11, that makes it more likely that they will sign up to take the.
Right. I remember when we first started doing that, the theory was it would encourage more students to try the SAT once they had done the PSAT. Has that borne out? Do we have a higher percentage of students taking the SAT at Danvers than, say, other schools, or have we looked at that?
Sean, can you
You're
go
gonna
the
have to-
podium, please? Thank you.
Sean oversees the AP program, testing at the high school.
Very similarly as when we started having students test PSATs in school. On average, there was about 70 to 80 students who took it on their own on a Saturday morning. That is still consistent across the high schools along the North Shore. At least you have about 70 to 85 kids a year taking it at schools on a Saturday morning, versus what we do on Wednesday in school, where you have over 200 kids per grade taking it.
Okay. All right. I looked at the AP data, and it's interesting. The raw total number of AP students, kind of dropped from 2017 to 2019, but the same percentage of students approximately are taking at least one AP course.
The percentage, I believe, is the percentage of students who are scoring a 3+ on the scores. So that percentage has remained. You'll see a little bit of fluctuation with the total number of APs, but the percent of our students who receive a qualifying score scores on a 1 to 5. So a qualifying score by the colleges is considered to be a 3, and that, if you look at that percentage, it's been very consistent over the years.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be also because we've had smaller class sizes?
Right.
over
That's
the
what
last-
I'm thinking.
Smaller class sizes,
Yeah.
so it stayed
Yep.
proportionate.
Okay. Mary, this is probably more for you, but is there, I don't know how to put this exactly, but when it comes to, and this could be SATs, PSATs, MCAS in particular, is there sort of a margin of error involved? And what I mean is, you could look at a given group of students one year to the next, and it's not going to follow perfectly. The growth is not going to be exact from year to year for every class. Students have a bad day. Students, the test is somehow a little different, a little harder, a little easier. Does the state have a percentage that they feel that it's more of a margin than a raw score, if you know what I mean?
Yes, and I think the parents that are getting they've got their the score reports for their students will see that bar, that margin of error built in. So when they get their student report, they'll see a mark that shows what the score was and where the child fell. But then they also see what they call a box and whisker kind of thing that shows, in any given day, they could score in this range of scores.
Okay.
So they show that statistical, margin, that at any given day, given all what you just said of, bad day for the kid, whatever.
Sure.
That student would score between those two scores and what they did score for that one test.
Okay.
Built into that. They also said when we were comparing like the change, they also said cohort size has, with this, growth like 11.7 change over 2 years versus a 1.7. They said cohort size also plays into a little bit of a margin of error in those improvement scores because of depending on how big the cohort is. But at this level, when you see our grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's about the same number of students. It gets different if you compared like a small elementary school to a big middle school,
Sure.
So that would be the difference. But on this, our student cohorts between the grade levels are pretty consistent. Number of students.
Yeah, it seems like the overall story is basically one of sort of consistent growth, blips here or there. Obviously, still some work to do. Let's see. I appreciate the fact that we're looking at both the SAT scores, the AP participation and scoring, the MCAS. From a standpoint of college admission, which I know a lot of parents are concerned about, so are most schools still using the SAT?
I think so. I'm going to defer as well to Sean.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
They're more attuned at the high school than Sean, especially being a former guidance counselor.
I'd say the majority of schools are still using the SATs, but each year it seems as though there's more and more schools that are going test optional. So if the student's scores are very strong, the student is encouraged to send their scores. If there's a gap in one of the scores, students are typically advised to not send them. Then they are, the admissions process goes through primarily their transcript, and in addition to letters of recommendation, activities, extracurricular activities, and so forth. More and more colleges, seems like every single year, is opting out, so it's really the student's choice. But to answer your question directly, it still is used by the majority of colleges.
Sure. What role are MCAS scores, or that kind of, every state now has some version of it. What role are those scores, if at all, playing in terms of college admission?
It doesn't play a direct role into admission decisions. Like at the state college level here, it factors into potential scholarships for the Adams Scholarship and the Koplik Award.
Sure.
But it doesn't factor into the decision to admit or deny.
Okay, and that's so. The importance of the MCAS is really pass that MCAS in 10th grade so you can get your diploma, move on to the next place you're going to be. But parents should be confident that even a rough MCAS score, a passing but rough score that a student has, isn't necessarily going to adversely affect their ability to get into college if that's what they're looking for.
Not through the admissions process. Certainly it's an indicator of areas for growth or challenges that they may face in high school and beyond at the collegiate level.
Right, and one of the things it tells us, I guess, in theory, is, are we preparing students to succeed in college? How are we doing in comparison to the frameworks? And where can we stress a little more to help students get a little better in comparison to the frameworks? So overall, again, we kind of go through this every year. I don't want to put too much emphasis on the MCAS scores by themselves, but they do matter to some extent. I think they're a good diagnostic tool. I think that's what both parents and citizens, the school system, we all ought to look at MCAS primarily as a diagnostic tool to tell us where we need to place an emphasis. We're always, either side of the state average. Obviously, you want to do better, but if you look at over a year-to-year basis, it's very consistent where certain communities stand on a year-to-year basis on MCAS, which ones are closest to the state average, which ones exceed it by quite a lot. We could go into all sorts of reasons for that. I think a lot of it has to do with resources, and the resources aren't just financial. There are other types of resources that different communities have available. and some of it's demographic, and some of it's the nature of the group of students and the size of population and how many schools you have, and all sorts of those things. But in general, it's good to see that steady growth. And it's good to see the planning that you're doing on a year-to-year basis to react to what the data is telling us. So just keep doing that. I think we'll see the incremental increases, and I think that's what can be expected at this point. I would like to sort of congratulate and thank the hard work at the middle school to move you in a single year, from that sort of where all the eyeballs are on you to a better position. So Adam, thank you and your staff for everything that you have done. Keep working, if you would, on those, the students who are more challenged and everybody. I think that goes for all the schools and education generally. The students who present with the challenges, we need to do everything we can to give them a real shot at whatever it is they want to do. So just keep working at it. I'm always impressed by the enthusiasm and the work I see from our staff, our administrators. Thank you all for that. And with that, I'm done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Eric. Jeff?
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know. The longer I have this job, the more I don't like averages. I see these averages, and I'm really starting to shift to like n=1 on all of this. And I just got my son's MCAS scores today, and so I looked at every single question. And parents do that, and you just don't do it for MCAS. You do it for exams and grades and Power School, which just is way too much. That's overload. But I mean, that's another story. So, I guess the one thing I would say about this presentation and others that we hear when we have budget time and everything else is what is the story we're trying to tell? And this is a good presentation in terms of the data and the numbers. I could tell 50 different stories. I could tell one of we're progressing. I could say we're still in the middle. I mean, the end of the day, are students learning? And I think we still need to do a better job of telling that story, either with this data or let's be very candid with ourselves, like Eric said, and said, this is a diagnostic, and, and I'll pick one, HRMS, ELA, that's one where we said we have work to do. What is the work we have to do? Why haven't we done it before? What has changed and what are we doing? And we started that last year. I mean, we've improved, so that's good. But that's where I think a lot of this is going to have to come through. I mean, charts 7 and 8, those to me are interesting because you can actually see, how many students are not meeting expectations, because I always kind of focus on the ends. I know there's so many ways you could split this, right? How many meet and how many exceeds, and that's 46%. And how does that compare against Beverly and Swampscott and all these other schools? Because that's where we're going to get most of the questions from the external communities. How do we compare? I mean, we never talked once in this presentation about how we compare, because supposedly the story is that doesn't matter. We need to focus on our own students, which is fine. I'm good with that. But I just wish, like 7 and 8, when we see a lot of those, are we gleaning as many insights as we can? If our focus is and some of the outcomes are, we need to focus on our higher needs students, where is the data on that? Are there grades there? Can we have something more specific regarding what is going on there? And maybe that will come up later during the school year, I think, when we talk about formative assessments versus summative, which is fine. So that's kind of the general sort of theme that I'm going with in this. So first question is HRMS, we have more work to do. What is the ELA work that we're going to be doing? Do we know? It was on the slide.
Sure. Between Adam and Ellen, would you like to?
I took this off their presentation to the faculty.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, I think just to start broadly, I'd say, like you said, you can look at these numbers and do a lot of things. When you look at, where we were a year ago, where we are now, when you break it down by any particular group, we had gains within, when you look at the overall scores, we had gains with every single group, every subgroup, total group. So, that's something I think indicates we're off to the right start. But as we also pointed out, we still, when you look at the data another way, it shows you that there's still more work to do. So I think specifically around ELA, it's continuing to
A lot of the work I think is happening with the adults, with the staff. So continuing to look at the standards, the priority standards, and looking at how are we teaching those standards, how are we assessing them along the way in terms of formative checkpoints, and then what are the sort of larger summative checkpoints? What are the big tests? What are the unit points where we're now looking at how the kids are doing? And then what are we doing with that data? So that's kind of this year's work is we feel like we now have this system of sort of the checkpoints along the way of the formative part. We're continuing to strengthen that. This year we're taking those summative assessments and we're meeting with the groups at each grade level. We're having the teachers bring their data, looking at their kids, looking at how they performed, having conversations with us about what are we seeing, then what do we need to do to fix what we're seeing. So I think we've strengthened our diagnostic approach. That's something that I think we got away from and sort of one of the reasons why we were where we were. And I think we've strengthened that diagnostic approach both on the everyday level, but also having more, so we have mid-trimester checkpoints now. And this is in all subjects, not just ELA, but for ELA, it'll be about where are they with those standards and what do we need to do about it. So I think we continue to strengthen that system across the board, and we think that will pay off.
So is that more of what we teach or how we teach?
Both, honestly. I mean, I think, so the what we teach is, are we really focusing on the standards we need to focus on? And that comes from looking at the previous year's data. How did the MCAS test assess that? What did the state determine? These are really the priorities.
Yeah.
And then the how we teach part is strengthening, in particular, our approach to teaching writing. And we continue to work on the Writers' Workshop, Lucy Hawkins model, strengthening that, continuing to dedicate more time. I think we also took some things out. So we took a hard look at our curriculum and said, you know, while this might be a unit that we love teaching, in terms of the standards, it's not as important as maybe we would want it to be, so we have to maybe let that go a little bit. We're emphasizing other things. We saw that, I think, particularly in grades 6 and 7. So we'll continue to do that work as well. And then what's different this year is where the administrators are meeting regularly with the teachers. So we've added in that collaborative support that we're putting our focus on this and we're spending the time doing it. And we're hoping that it will continue to pay off. We feel good about so far, but still a ways to go.
Okay, good. And it sounds like, because we talked about this, it might have been almost a year ago, but when we talked about MCAS scores, so that's the curriculum, we talked about teachers and the training and how they work. So now if we focus on the students, weren't there some things you were doing as well with, you know, making sure students were relaxed, evaluating afterwards, kind of talking to them and saying, you know, what worked, what didn't work, the environment, making sure they're not stressed, schedule. Was there some of that as well, or was that?
That was a lot of what we did last year. So I felt like last year we started with the kids a little bit and said, we're going to focus on mindset going into the test.
Good.
Emphasizing effort. So, and trying to find the balance of this is important, but we don't want you necessarily too stressed.
Yeah.
A little stress is okay, right?
Yeah.
But we wanted to try to balance that mindset of the kids going in, a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of visual encouragement, personal meetings with kids. So teachers taking a little time to say, hey, did you know you scored this on your last round? And what do you think about that? And I don't know if you want to talk about looking at the writing samples.
Yeah, something that we're going to start in the next week or so is of the released items, of the released essay questions, we also have we can access the students' actual answers for those released items. So we're going to start doing some work with the teachers, looking at a cross-section of students and doing a data-driven dialogue, basically, where they make some predictions about how they feel like these students would have performed, then actually looking at the student writing samples and to see where are students performing the way we would expect them to perform based on how we know them as students from last year, and where are the places where kids who maybe did really well for us in the classroom last year that didn't translate to the testing environment, and then try and kind of dig into that data a little bit and see what discrepancies might be attributed to.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and we've talked about this before too, but there's time elements. So you now have students trying to type and they don't have time to finish all of the questions. And then the other thing we talked about, I think it was 2 to 3 years ago, was you would teach something in, making it up, 4th or 5th grade, and then all of a sudden it's now on some 6th grade exam, right, for science. And so some of those were interesting as well. I don't know if that's still the case, but hopefully not. So that's good. So that follows our formative assessment, summative assessment model that we're already doing anyway. We're not reconfiguring everything, hopefully, for these exams. It still follows our normal process. We want to make sure the students are learning. It sounds like they are, but we're tweaking things, focusing on a student-centered approach combined with a new curriculum, and that's where we're kind of driving to. Is that an interpretation that's fair?
Good summary, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thanks on that part. Do we know how many students opted out of these MCAS exams? I mean, I remember reading about this. This was going to be a big thing.
3 or 4 students.
So it's 3 or 4. So we're not talking about, 100 students or something. Okay.
K to 3 through 8, and then I was none at 10.
Okay.
'Cause it's diploma.
Yeah, no, that's.
I forgot to mention also that the state set the competency determination for the graduation rate at partially meeting expectations. So long as you scored in partially meeting expectations, or exceeding, you have will get your diploma. And if not, not meeting expectations, students will be taking retests to try to earn that competency determination.
Gotcha. And then the last question I have, and I don't think I've ever asked this, but I don't even know if it's relevant, which is on slide 11, if you compare elementary schools, is it relevant to look at different schools? I mean, if you all have the same curriculum, I mean, the teachers are moved to group. I mean, you have different pockets of students, I get it, but I just sort of feel like, there's no message here which says, okay, Riverside did great on this, and Smith did.
Depending on the grade level and the school. It's,
I mean, I know why they do it, because they feel like there might be something, but we've never interpreted any of these to be there's some sort of issue with any school, right?
No.
Okay.
No, and it's just, again, I think it's that you look more at the grade level, and there's pockets at each school. Every school has a grade, grade level or a subject that they can celebrate, and they also have grade levels that they, need more work needs to be done. So I think we've met. I've gone around to each of the elementary schools. We've kind of looked at their MCAS data and kind of talked about that, and so we're working on, shifting focus of it.
So ELA third graders from Thorpe, rocking a 521 are not going to necessarily do the, advanced ELA in high school. Is that what you're? Everybody comes in.
As they come through, and again, the test gets more challenging as you move up those grade levels.
Well, yeah, and I mean third grade.
It's it's cumulative, sophistication. So
yeah, okay, all right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Great. I just have
Oh,
two.
sorry, Dave.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
I was looking at some numbers.
That's right. I'm just going to move along. I just have 2 questions, and Jeff just said, well, we haven't compared, and both of my questions about comparing. My first one is, do we have access to data to see how other schools in the area are performing on AP tests?
On AP tests, I think we can get similar data. The Department of Ed reports that out. The initial data, I think, like this type of data that I have up here, we could go and compare it to other schools.
I think it would be interesting just to know, because if our students look like averaging about 72%, getting a 3 or more on AP tests, are other schools, getting 95, or are they getting 40s? Just so we know, our AP teachers are doing a good job, a great job, or not so good job.
Well, you'd also have to dig deeper on that too, in terms of what percentage of students in different towns are taking advanced courses.
There's a gazillion ways you can, slice the numbers. I'm just more of a curiosity factor.
I know the state average over time, we've been right at or above the state average in terms of percentages. One other metric is on the accountability report, so that advanced coursework.
Yep.
You can look up each district or school by that. I haven't gone and done that. That's an interesting question. But I know for the school, we've exceeded our goal. So that's for all students. That's one thing we've been really proud of. Over 3/4 of our students are taking 11th and 12th graders are taking at least one advanced course. We also almost tripled the percentage of students with disabilities in that category too. So that's just another.
Yeah, I know there's
way
been
to
a
measure.
concerted effort over the last, several years to do that, and it seems to be paying off, and lots of students are doing it, which is great. But, people compare MCAS scores by district and all that. So I was just curious if that data is even available, and
We could do that.
how we might fair. And then the same thing with chronic absenteeism. You know, are we alone in that? I'm doubting we are, with all the school avoidance and school refusal and all of that and anxiety. But I'm curious, you know, are we right where almost everyone else is, or like we have a lot of kids not coming to school, or a few, you know, a smaller percentage? Again, a million ways you can slice that data,
Yeah.
but just be interesting to know if that's available.
Yeah. Just from our attending superintendent's conferences, we know that many districts are.
It's an issue.
Yeah, it's a big issue. So it's when the commission, we met with commissioner, that was something that was brought up.
Which hopefully the SEL will all help with that.
Yes.
You know, that's the goal. But, you know, again, two questions of curiosity, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All set, Dave?
Yes.
Arthur?
So Jeff, I never looked at any of my kids' MCAS scores, not even at the paper, not even at the actual
Really?
score. Yeah, because it
I
doesn't
see if
matter.
I could take the test.
It's
And I
as
never
you
looked at their
know-
Power School.
As you know,
I don't
it's-
even know how to access Power School.
It's useless to me. And Eric's right. Year to year, if you go back and look at everything, every town comes in about the same place every year, going back in the 17 versions of the test that they've had over the years. So, you know, and you know, you look at some of these, like Thorpe has a 521.6, and they're first of the 5 schools in grade 3, and they have a 496.2, and they're last of the 5 schools in grade. Like, the number, they mean nothing. Like, literally mean nothing. Eric's right. What they mean is that by the time you get to 10th grade, you need to pass it so you can graduate, and that's what it's good for. And so I don't think there's a lot that we can do about this particular numbers and where we come out every year. I think it's always going to be about the same, and that's fine because I don't think it matters that much. But what we can do something about is this absenteeism thing, I would think. So what is causing this chronic absenteeism? What are the reasons for this? And because it's essentially it's not like I could, you know, I just had kids that went to high school a little while ago, so I could get the high school thing, but it seems like this chronic absenteeism throughout the whole 1 to 12, K to 12.
there is.
So you must have looked into this and there must be work as to what's happening with this absenteeism.
It is a social emotional, you know, learning and lack of thereof of some of our students. School avoidance is something that we deal a lot with, and you know, slightly less, but it adds up. Is sometimes when families go on vacation, they take the week or longer vacation. That adds up to 5 days, and then if you're sick later on in the year, it's 18 days that gets you labeled chronically absent. So that's a struggle too. So it's.
So what percentage of our kids are out 10% of this school days?
It depends on, you know, what
Yeah.
school you're.
But just like elementary to middle to high school.
Actually, I think I have it here. It's going to take me 1 minute to look it up for you.
Right. So as Mary looks that up, what we really have been focusing in on the last couple of years is also changing our model, especially at the elementary level, of working with our parents. So through Power School, we can run the reports of how many absence is a student has had over a certain amount of time. And we were working with our attendance officer to take a look at that, and we really have asked the principals to become more involved with that. They know the families, they know the students. It can be difficult conversations to have with a family of having your children, the consistent pieces, but we feel like we have now a focus for our elementary schools that this is a priority. We also talked about that we need to make sure school is a place that students want to come. So that's what you hear about why the SEL pieces and the work that we have with the curriculums, with the support of the town for the different curriculums that are really student-centered. So we're giving all students a reason that sometimes sort of in the past, different students didn't fit in as well with the opportunities that we have when we're teaching in a certain way. So as Mary talked about earlier, the universal design for learning, that we have access points for all of our students, why we're doing project-based learning to make sure that students come in, and those are the things that students are going to remember and they become passionate about, as you saw in the examples from our students that spoke about their definition of success. So we're changing our model of looking at how we look at attendance, that it's not just a number and then saying to a parent, you need to get your child here to school on time, but it's about building those relationships that we have always had and having a more focus on the piece about coming to school.
So, and you hit on something that was part of what I was talking about and what I was going to ask next, or talk about next, which is the one thing in all of this stuff, the one thing that actually worried me was the lower levels absenteeism, because if you're in elementary and you get into the habit of not going to school, that's not going to get better when you get into middle and high school. I just don't see. It's not good. I mean, that's where I think we need to really be focused on.
Right, and the piece where what happens at the middle school level is where we see more of having to work through, and we see it as a resource, but working through with our court system and looking at failure to send. So it really is about some of the work with parents early on in the importance of coming to school, and it is our obligation.
Yeah. No, and again, I want the kids to come out, like a lot of the kids we've seen over the years, which we talk about, they come out ready to do things. And this testing stuff doesn't really tell us anything about that. But you still have to be in school to reap the benefits of all this. And
Yes.
So that's the concerning thing to me in all this. And it doesn't make me feel better that a lot of schools are having the same problem. I mean, it's something that we need to deal with here and worry about the other schools, not at all. Because it's not our job, but so that's what really concerned me. Did you find any numbers for me?
I did. I found lots of numbers, but we have. Oops, I got too many open right now. Our district is 8.2% of our students are chronically absent.
Okay,
which is up slightly from the year before, so that automatically puts you in accountability-wise in the negative.
And what is the accountability looking for as far as that's concerned?
To go the opposite way, so to improve.
But I mean, to what level? Do they have a level
They
which?
set targets for you every year, so they set they give us a target every year that we need to meet, and unless you reduce down to, and that's where that designation of meeting or significantly making significant progress or moderate progress, that all comes from these how you're making progress to meeting targets, and chronic absenteeism and achievement and growth and participation in the MCAS.
So the goal was a 1% reduction, and we went up by about 0.5.
Okay.
So it just swung.
All right. Well, that's something I think we can work on and make progress with, I would hope. I mean, I know you're still dealing with, society as a whole, but I think it's something that we can definitely work on. I don't think I have any. It does really annoy me when we have to use the term turnaround plan, because I just don't think it's appropriate. So that's my take on that. I don't think there's a real issue that needed to be turned around. And I'm glad to hear that, we talk about we're doing as much as we can and everything. That's great. But, I mean, again, let's not put too much emphasis on what MCAS tells us. But that's it. I just was really bothered by the absenteeism, so I'm glad to learn a little more about that, and I'm glad to know that you're focused on trying to deal with that. Thanks.
What's that?
Can I pick up on what Arthur's talking about a little bit in terms of the chronic absenteeism? It feels like we recognize there's a problem, but I'm not sure we've got a good handle on the why. And a lot of things they're personal and they're individual, and yet you can probably bucket the reasons. There are some percentage of students are going to be out because there's a chronic illness or a family tragedy, but beyond that, it feels like there needs to be a really coordinated effort. I know we obviously want to look at each individual case, and that's a starting point because that's that student who's behind that. But also, I think aggregating some data as to what's going on. And I don't know how involved the Student Services Department is, but it feels like this is a global problem. And while you want to attack each case individually, we also need to pull some data together, for lack of a better word, as to what's the bigger picture and what global solutions, if any, are there that we can, use to attack that. And I think an example is the transition program at the high school for students who are out and then come back. that is like a sensible solution to a global problem. And it seems to me we have to start looking for that at all of the grade levels. Yeah, the individual cases, right, talk to the parents, figure out what's going on, but it really does feel like we've identified the problem. Now we have to get behind it a little more.
Thank you.
It's almost like, the school, and, we need to try to make it if we can, but if we can't go on this particular week, we're just not going to. I get that there's a big, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this and everything, like you were saying, but also there's there's almost an undercurrent of our goal is to get there, but
Yeah, there's always the thing too, Arthur. I remember, when our kids were in school, there was always a concern about parents taking students out to go on vacation.
Right.
To me, that's not. That doesn't feel like a new cause. That feels like something that you're always dealing with. The newness seems to be in whatever social or emotional issues are coming up in terms of why there's greater student absence. And again, we don't have to talk about individual cases, but we should talk about the problem.
Plus, then it feeds off itself. So if some kids aren't going all the time, then other kids kind of feed off that. Well, it just has to be reversed. And again, I don't know the answer. I know you guys are working on it. So I just want to say I think we should be focused on really working on that.
I agree. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. That stood out at me as well when I was reading the reports, and I think I was reading it wrong. But then I asked Dr. Dana. In the high school, I think, we got 0 points for that. So we were missing points because there was chronic absenteeism. So again, you're aware of it. It's something we're working on and continue to work on. Even having a child that did not like school starting in kindergarten, I worked with the school to get him there. There were days where I'm like, I'm not sure this is going to happen, but working with the social workers, working with the principal, working with the classroom teacher, to get the child to go to school. It has been a struggle, but we're at the point where he goes happily now. Doesn't mean he always likes to go to school, but it does mean he shows up and he's present. But it is something that I know the schools have worked with, but again, I think with just all the social, emotional, the anxieties, what's going on in the world, what's going on at home. There's a lot of different things that factor into it, but I think as a staff and as a district, we are working to help the families. So families that need help, please reach out to your principals, to your teacher, to the superintendents to say, I need help to get my child to go to school. Because I think all parents want their kids to go to school and learn. Sometimes certain things get in the way and they just need the additional help. So that was one. State priorities, do those change frequently?
The priority standards?
Yeah.
No, not
No.
necessarily.
But the standards for the different grade levels sometimes change.
No, the standards all stay the same. What they can test can change over time, but
Yep.
usually there are definite standards that get tested the same, every year, year after year. Every
Okay.
now and then you might get one that pops up that hadn't been tested before, but for most part, there's the same, 12 or so, 12 standards or so that you'll see on the test.
Okay.
12 to 15.
And just a question, are you privy to what questions will be asked, like general questions?
No, they do release 3 through 8. They release, 10 questions from each test, grades, ELA, math, science, and then 3 through 8. At the high school, they release the full test, so they're privy to what questions are being asked and what standards. So the other, there's 40 questions that they test over time. You see what standards got tested, but you don't see how they tested those standards. So that's the difference, 3 through 8. We don't have, it used to be in the old MCAS, we get the full test out, and that really gave us lots of good information. Now we have more limited information, but yet know the standards that they're testing. But releasing those items really gives you a picture of exactly how they're testing those standards and what they value in that standard.
I do want to commend Holton Richmond for the work that they did last year and in their scores this year, but I know that there's more work to be done and across all levels. But it's something that we're working on as a district, and we're also working on giving our students a well-rounded education in all areas and all types of learning. So I do applaud the district and the teachers and the principals for working towards that. And, we're staying, pretty much in the, average, but I know we all want to strive for more. So I know that everyone's working towards that on a daily basis here in the district. So I want to thank you for that. So that's all that I have. So any questions, comments from the audience? Yep. Do you mind going to the podium and just introducing yourself, please? Thank you.
So my name is Ted Blake, and I'm a parent at Highlands, but also I'm on the finance committee for the town. And I was there in the spring where there's quite a bit of spirited discussion about some of the topics that we talked about tonight, and Arthur kept saying we talked about a lot of this in October. So here I am to ask a couple questions.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Hey, no problem. The first one, I think, is really just a point of information on absenteeism. So I think we got like 1 out of 4 points on the score. What's I think Keith, you alluded to a little bit. How do they? What are the like? What would you have to do to max out that 4 points?
So they break it into different subsets. So they rank your chronic absenteeism with all students, lowest performing, high needs, and economically disadvantaged. So big picture, you almost get a point for each of those targets that you hit. So each of them, whatever your rate was in the previous year, the goal is to decrease it for the following year.
So they're sort of targets. It's not like a statewide standard. It's sort of targets for every town has their own like prescription from this.
Based on where you were the previous year, trying to get you to continue to grow. So even if you went down by 10 points this year, you were at 20%, you went to 10%. Next year they would say, well, now you need to get to 8. The next year they would say, now you need to get to 6, right? Keep striving to go lower and lower.
Okay. And then the second, can you help me understand, like, so they call it a scale score. So, I'm just looking at a math test, there's 40 questions, and it's like there's like 55 points. Like, what's the difference in points achieved between like a 512 and a 500 score?
That's a good question, because
So
I don't know.
when they say, like, is it a curve? Are they doing some funky curve?
There's a formula, so they have a formula that they put your raw score into that calculates this 400 to 500 number that comes out with the scale score. So a lot of those partially meetings that are right at the top of the bracket, like 498, 499, that's like a question.
Right,
that the kids, or depending on the open response, what they call a constructive response, items are worth more than the multiple choice. So it depends on.
And then, so along those lines too, like, what's the difference between, I think exceeding is 530 and meeting is 500 and partial is 470. Like, what's the difference in like score between somebody at 470 and 500? There's an awful lot of discussion about it in the spring, and I'm trying to quantify 5 points below the state average. Is that one point out of 55, or is it 6 points out of 55 because it's scaled? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I hadn't thought of it that way. Like thinking like strategically, like how many questions.
Yeah, I'm trying. Like, how much
are
we talking about? Sort of a margin of error thing here, or is it like? Yeah, I'm just trying to get it.
Right. We always do look at those kids that are just right at that,
Yeah.
we call them the cusp. So especially when we have looked at the MCAS, we take that partially meeting expectations band, and we really look at who's on that top band, because those kids are, on any given day, could have been probably over on that meeting expectations, or just a little bit more work, and that's why we do the formative assessment work, so we can really get them up into that meeting expectations. And the same thing with the ones that are a little bit lower, trying to get them to score higher.
Then I think the other question I have is more broad. I think if I understand correctly, in the middle school we have different math tracks, but the other classes are taught, subjects are taught collectively. When I was in school, and by no means am I implying that was the right way to do it, we had 3 tracks for every subject. I'm just curious how our practice compares to what statewide practices are for that, like the typical school system and the high achieving school systems, and how our structure in the middle school compares.
We actually are, it's common practice for most, for the tracking to be only in math at a middle school level and starting in 7th grade with pre-algebra. And that's similar to many of the districts around us as well, and high performing. Some people are trying to detrack math even, so that all kids have access and have a chance to to have access to higher level math. But our practices are very similar to other districts around.
I think that's it.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. I did have one other thing about the SAT. Having just gone through college admissions with my child, when the test optional is on the application, my student was like, yeah, no, I don't want to, I don't need to because it's optional. And his mindset, I'm like, you should. Your score was, decent. You should do it. And he was like, no, I don't need to. And I think, and it was confusing me why colleges do test optional. Do you know why, Sean? Like, why is it because it's weighted less now than it was, or because they're looking at the whole student versus just the tests? Like, I'm just curious.
The reasoning behind it, Mary Beth, has been a lot of colleges now are saying that we're not going to use that as much as a factor for decisions, for admissions decisions, versus one Saturday, taking a test on one Saturday morning versus 3 years of classwork. That's really the logic that they've come across. Great schools that traditionally always put great emphasis on the SATs has gotten away from that. Like Holy Cross came on board a couple years ago. A lot of the NESCAC schools no longer use it because they really place so much greater emphasis and value on what the students are doing each and every single day at the school, the coursework, the levels, the grades, and so forth, the growth. They always want to see trying to get a little bit better versus coming in and taking a test on a Saturday. Some of the things we've talked about here, social emotional learning, maybe the student was sick that day, maybe the student had anxiety or was physically ill or something that could kind of cloud the judgment a little bit on those decisions.
Oh, thank you. Because, I remember going to college, and the SAT score is what got you into college. If you didn't have a great score, you weren't going to a great school. You were going to a state school. So when my son was doing this, I'm like, what? This is so easy. Like, not to have to do it. And out of the 5 schools he applied, only 1 requested them. And he got into all of them. And so I was just curious as to that whole mindset.
Seems like a logical analysis to apply to the importance of MCAS, doesn't it? Just wondering.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right. All set?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary, Keith, Lisa, all the data. And again, all the information is available on the Department of Ed's website. It's kind of a little funky how you find it, but you can see each school. You can see the grade, the scores. You can go in and see previous year's scores as well and compare and contrast. And you can see other school districts. So it's a great tool for people to, if they want to look through it.
Mary Beth, we didn't get to talk to all of you. Thank you for what you're doing. We know how hard it is that you all work to aggregate data and figure out what's going on, and we appreciate it. It's become a much bigger part of your life than you ever thought when you started education. And thank you, everybody up and down the line, for what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll have this presentation on our website this week.
Great.
To be able to share
Thank
that
you.
with the community too. Great. Thank you. Next, and I'll ask our administrators to stay for a few more moments in case there are questions on our school improvement plans, and then be able to make that transition too. Next, we have our review of the October 1 student enrollment report. You have that information. So that was last week. The state asked every district to capture that information, and it's used at the state level. In Danvers, we have recorded on October 1st, we have 3,514 students this year, and that includes our students that are part of our out-of-district, so every student included within the Danvers Public Schools working with us. And with that, although that number is slightly down as a total pre-K through 12th grade, well, pre-K through 22 really, 22, and our out-of-district is down about 41 students. We are seeing the increase in our preschool. So just as we spoke about numbers coming in from the students that are coming to the Danvers Public Schools, so preschool is increasing. The work that we did with our Flex Zone work and presented that to the school committee last year, we can really see that when you look at Smith School, and the number is growing in the Smith area. So we'll continue to work on having families come into the Smith School as we get ready for an opening in 2021. And then the other thing that we're going to continue to watch with Essex Tech still being relatively new in its opening, we'll continue to look at that grade 8 to 9 transition piece there. So those are some of our pieces of information, but overall, again, stability in the numbers that we have within our school. Class sizes are really looking good this coming school year also.
So can I ask a question on that? Yeah. So on the text, so grade 8, 279, grade 9 to 11, and I know it changes year to year. So how many of our students went to the tech this year?
We do not have it for you for tonight, but we will get that for you. So at different times we ask, because what we have to give to the state, so we've asked the private schools to give us that information by October 15th. So we did actually have this meeting a little bit earlier with Columbus Day than we would normally have, so we will get that to you for next month.
Okay, so if I were going to ballpark from a previous year,
in FY18 we had 30 students.
Yep.
In FY19, 44. So again, we're looking at that number has risen.
So they took a lot more students.
We're not exactly sure, but we're thinking it's probably in the 60 range, yes.
Which was part of their expansion plan as they opened the new school, is that they kept the upper classes lower and have been admitting more students as freshmen to continue through the cohort.
And then do we have statistics on other private schools as well, or?
We do. So
will
the
have
different
those?
private schools that we send to, we can share that report with
Okay.
you. Good.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just can the preschool number, obviously goes up, and it's pretty high.
Mhm.
I would think. Is it good facial? Tell me how things are going at Riverside with the preschool. How is it? I mean, is it getting to the point where it's too much? You already told me by your facial reaction. So
Violetta, do you want to go to
be
the?
honest.
So as she comes to the mic, we have been looking at the numbers. So again, they have been rising. We look at the student needs that Violetta will share with you. We have asked Mary Tatum and Violetta to look at really the preschool pieces of it. We've had the same model for a number of years. So to look at the model that we have also. So I'll turn it over to Violetta.
Our little falcons are growing, and they are doing beautifully. So we have five preschool classrooms. One is also our early learning center, which is a co-taught classroom. All of our students are fully integrated, full inclusion. Recently, they've been working very closely with Julie Pasternak in creating a choice workshop time, which has been wonderful, and I have been present in all of their classrooms. During this time, children are really free to learn a particular skill with their classroom lead teacher, and then they're able to go into various workshop centers to be creative, to practice these skills. Recently, they've been practicing sharing and turn taking. That's been a huge skill for them in the very beginning of the school year, but it is a growing program for sure.
So I'm sure that you're doing as an excellent job with the preschool, and that's kind of not what I'm asking. What I'm kind of asking is, are we stretching the space that we have? Are we stretching the staff that we have? Are we getting, because it's I think we had this problem at Highlands many years ago where we were really kind of busting at the seams, and it got to be worrisome. So what I want to know is, like, how much more of growth can we sustain? I mean, there has to be a point where we can't sustain more growth.
So not to toot Violetta's horn, but her and her staff have been great this year working with us on that. So we did see a bubble, and in the budget process, we added a halftime classroom for this school year, so it meets AM and PM. So we added half of that day, so we have the capacity to add the other half of it. Continues to grow, and we continue to find funding because we have to. But we did move music out of their current classroom into a different space, which used to be a workroom in the building, and then we put the preschool, because it had a larger population, into where the music room was. So the staff really has been accommodating. Violetta has been great with, we revamped arrival and dismissal to try to make that work more efficiently and make it so that cars could still drive through the parking lot.
Okay, so
it is putting a pinch on
we're
the space.
doing it. We're doing what we have to do. How much more can we add to it before we can't do it?
About a halftime classroom, about a PM preschool session, and then we would need to really look at what that looked like.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you're already starting to look at that, because it's probably going to keep growing. I would think.
We actually had a conversation this afternoon about that, Lisa and I, and we're going to continue to share that, especially as we move into the FY21 budget process.
Great. No, I want everybody to be happy.
And really, no, but a testament to the whole Riverside community. They really have been so accommodating, so willing to move out of a full-size music room into a smaller space, have to store their instruments somewhere else, and really be team players. So we're appreciative of that.
And Riverside is truly a pre-K to 5 building. We are one. It's not that preschool is separate, an entity in the building. Everybody collaborates together, works together. Our 5th graders at times are helping our preschoolers. So it's a really nice community in that sense.
And you have the dog, so.
And we're just
we have a dog.
and we're just going to start parking, in the water at Post Landing.
So
Pretty soon.
Floating parking lot.
Floating
Get a
parking
ferry,
lot, something.
maybe.
I'm
Big
not
time.
sure. Wait for the town meeting warrant article for that
There you go.
proposal. I hope you
All
support
right,
it.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
do you have anything?
I'm good.
Jeff, anything?
No, I think this was good.
I do have one follow-up, which is the preschool. You can say, is it about, like, what's the ratio of students who might have special needs going forward versus, is it 50-50? Is it
1-to-1.
1-to-1? Okay,
That's the goal. So we continue to screen, periodic screening for peer partners.
Okay, so I take it we're keeping an eye on the impact that might have on student services later on, of course, because,
Which we
if the
also
numbers are
added some
growing, they're
additional
growing.
services
Yeah.
this year in speech to help account for that increase in services needed for the special education population.
Great. Thank you.
I just looked at the last year's grade 8, 281, and this year's grade 9 is 211. So it went down 70, and so basically you're saying like 45 of those went to the tech?
We think probably more. 55.
55.
Adam
So-
thinks, right?
So actually the vast majority of the reduction is tech?
That's a quarter of the kids went to the tech. That's a lot.
No, 55 out of 280. So like a sixth.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Call it 20%.
They
Yeah,
do.
it's
I
still
mean,
a
to
lot
the
of kids.
tech's
Yeah.
credit, they continue to diversify their programs and continue to move. I would just my personal somewhat away from maybe traditional trades as people
Well,
see it and more.
So I don't think
into-
that's to the tech's credit. I think the tech is not servicing the kids that would need a technical education, and that's a discussion for
different-
another day. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was FinCom. I
That
forgot
came
his
up at
name.
FinCom,
Yeah, that was the
exactly.
FinCom
So it
conversation.
is a desirable option for students.
Right.
sorry to drag to.
No,
keep
and
this
we were
going.
hitting on topics that are of importance. And so just to finish up on the part about the preschool, this is kind of what the state said when we were looking at Smith School in terms of the projections of the town. And it's not hard to drive around town. And I know we go through buildings and we talked about cyclical things, but you've got a lot more buildings in town. You got a lot more houses. You got a lot more condos or whatever else. And you got a lot more families. And so the state said, look, this is what's going to happen. And it's happening. So elementaries are going to start to be squeezed, pretty soon. So keep us apprised of, to Art's point, I know he didn't say it, but I'll say it. I mean, if we need more space, if that means renovation, construction, finding something else, let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Eric? Anything?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Riverside's the only school that currently has preschool.
Yes.
All right. Very good.
All right, great.
Thank
So
you.
that sort of leads
So
us
now
right
we go
into
to facilities update.
Keith?
I think
how
we
this
already
works.
did that. Really, the work at Smith School, phase 1 has pretty much been completed now. So we're waiting to install just a couple more things. So we'll see a lull now until the end of November or early December when we start to do steel and foundations. We do have the official groundbreaking ceremony on Wednesday, October 16th at 9 a.m. So if you're available, school committee, public, please feel free to join us that morning.
Thank you.
Great. Unfinished business.
Thank you. We have 3 items. The superintendent recommends the approval of the proposed 2019-2020 Danvers Public School Strategic Plan goals for a second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Eric, any questions?
No,
Comments?
good.
Jeff?
Nope.
All set?
Fine.
Arthur? Looks good.
Thank you. So next we have our school improvement plans. The superintendent.
We gotta take a vote
on it, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So.
Trying for you.
I beat Arthur out of here.
Guys get somewhere to be or what? Yeah.
So all those in favor of a second reading of the strategic plan, year 2 goals?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None? All set. Passed.
We're going to slow down for the next one. We have our pre-K to 12 school improvement plans for 2019-20. The superintendent recommends the approval of the proposed 2019-2020 pre-K to 12 school improvement plans for a second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Arthur?
Nope. Good.
Dave?
All set?
Jeff?
No.
Eric?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the 2019-2020 school improvement plans, pre-K through 12?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? That's passed.
Great. So thank you. So as we transition into the building and then our new building, that administrators are all set for their agenda items for this evening. Thank you. So next we have our Smith School building project, where we needed to have some votes, and this one wasn't more than a procedure, it was a policy. So it's back here. The superintendent recommends the approval of the following policy for the Smith School Building Project Collaborative for High Performing Schools, the CHIPS program, for a second reading for the OM 110 Energy Star Appliance and Equipment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Eric?
No, I'm good. I think we talked about last time this was a policy versus a resolution, so. Yep.
I'm good.
Jeff? Dave?
All set?
Good.
Arthur? All those in favor of the OM
Motion.
110 Energy Star Appliances and Equipment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Passes.
Great. Thank you.
New business. The MASC conference is coming up in November. On the agenda is the resolutions. Every year, MASC, they work together and come up with some resolutions to present to the state. You should have received a booklet in the mail with the resolutions. If not, there's a link in the agenda that will take you to it. Our meeting for November happens before the conference, so we can discuss tonight if you've read them, or we can discuss it in November as well. I didn't really see anything too much on there that was, but would you like to discuss it tonight?
How could you tell?
All right, go ahead.
I just had just one item. I don't know if everybody's read it, but Resolution 2, which was submitted by the Arlington School Committee, proposes essentially, as I read it, to eliminate the MTEL requirement for new teachers.
Yes.
And I understand the desire that there's some feeling that the presence of the MTEL, and sometimes it's held where it's difficult to get to by car, and there's a feeling that it is holding down a growth in appropriate diversity among the teaching ranks. I understand that, but that seems like an awfully large, like a significant step in terms of education policy, and I'm inclined to think more that should be referred to a study group. And I know that this doesn't change anything by itself, it's a resolution, but still, if we're going to show up and vote, I think we ought to take time to think about it. So that's the one I have kind of an issue with personally.
If you'd like to jot down some of your thoughts for it for when I do go.
Sure.
I can either speak to it or see if other folks, because a lot of times before the resolutions are voted, sometimes there are amendments made to it prior to it going to a vote, like anything else, but yeah.
Well, again, that's just, I'm one person, one school committee member. If everybody else is all for it, then, so I think we ought to arrive at some sort of consensus, not necessarily tonight. I don't know if anybody else read them or thought about it. Or.
I'm just curious what the administration thinks about it for hiring teachers. Is it a detriment to have it, or is it not an issue?
I personally don't think it's an issue. It's something that all of us have also taken and passed,
Right.
and it's just a kind of one of those
Kind of part of the
prerequisites
process.
that
Okay.
Arthur?
I'm fine.
Jeff?
The only one it's just a larger question. So resolution 1 is banning polystyrene from schools. I don't know if we use it. I don't know what we do with plastic straws. I know we've got water bottles. This is just a comment in general. I don't know what our environmental district policy is on all of this. It may be on an agenda item at some point. It would be good to kind of review that. Where are we headed? Where are we going? What's important? I mean, I know we don't vote on stuff, I don't think, like that, but I'm just curious as to what our
No, we do have a
policies.
focus on recycling in all of the schools. So we do have paper and plastic recycling in all of our cafeterias, as well as all of our classrooms. We currently do have styrofoam trays. We have explored alternates when it comes to cardboard, and they tend to break down with lots of food spilled all over the floor.
Yeah.
We've tried to find programs to recycle it, and nobody will recycle it. We've gone through the process of washing it, et cetera, to make it recyclable, and then we struggle to find people to pick it up. I would say operationally, that would be a real challenge. We've also piloted using plastic trays and then cardboard pieces, and unfortunately with students and with young children, many of the plastic trays get thrown out. So then it becomes a cost barrier. So really, the styrofoam trays is still kind of, I think, best practice, especially for elementary students.
Okay, good, perfect. That's good, and that sort of discussion, for a larger environmental discussion on the policy stuff.
Right, and we could be happy to have.
'Cause I think this is good,
DPW come and talk about all of the different recycling initiatives that we have in the schools.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good.
Can I
Thanks.
just ask, literally, it's a problem with kids taking a plastic tray, dumping the stuff in the trash, and putting it on top, just like you would at any fast food restaurant?
The kids throw away tray and all.
Can't we have someone monitor that to train them what goes in the trash and what goes on top?
We have tried repeatedly and have the same problem. So we could try again, but
It just
especially
seems like a training issue.
especially with younger kids, it's a different challenge with younger kids.
Right.
Yeah, maybe we could.
I think we'd probably get to sort of the priorities that we have from everything that we listened to before, and we know it's on our list of things to do, and taking a look at it of the amount of time that we have for lunch, and what's happening. So it is something that we continue to talk with Gail and the DPW and food services, but we're not there yet.
Very good. Nothing else? Again, if you do have anything, let me know at the November meeting, and I will take that down with me. Okay. Let's see. Out-of-state field trip, overnight field trip request.
The superintendent recommends the approval of the out-of-state field trip for DHS to Central Amazon, Brazil, April 10th through the 24th of 2021, and the DHS Model UN to Providence, Rhode Island, November 23rd and 24th of 2019.
No move.
Second.
Discussion.
You could not pick two more opposite places on the planet.
For the same
I mean, that's
month.
that's impressive. Central Amazon, Brazil. Wow.
That must be for the Amazon ecology class.
Yes, and Mary and I, along with Jason, was able to meet with Jeff Gallo last week. So this is moving in the direction of almost like a capstone type of project. Again, the work that we're doing with senior internships and the revamping of courses. So the Amazon trip has happened for a number of years with the course that Jeff has taught, and he would like to see whether he's able to move forward with a longer trip that would end up with around social and environmental conscious decision-making, having students really look at what our impact on the earth is.
And that would happen more towards senior internship time
Yes,
instead of...
right.
That's great.
Any questions about it? Comments? Any further? Okay. All those in favor of field trip, do we do them separately? Or?
No.
Nope.
No.
Field trip.
We've done them together if there
Yep.
isn't any
All those in
question.
favor of the field trip requests?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? And that passes.
Thank you.
Fundraising requests.
The superintendent recommends the approval of the fundraising events for DHS Cross Country, the class of 2022, and the Falcons Finest as part of DECA.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Arthur, Dave, Jeff?
No.
Eric? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Fundraising requests pass.
Okay, the last one here for the new business is our North Shore Education Consortium. And we ask that the school committee vote for the superintendent to serve on the board of directors.
You, the superintendent.
Yes, thank you. Your superintendent, yes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
You've served on this board.
We haven't. This year we had a number of new superintendents on the board, so it was an opportunity to go back and look at the bylaws, and we should be voting on this on an annual basis. So we decided that all 17, 18 districts would bring it back this year.
Great. Any other discussion? All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? None? Congrats.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Order of business, communications.
Thank you. So we always have here the link to our North Shore Education Consortium, and the next update we'll give in this fall will be our audit. So I'll share that with you in the coming months.
Very good. Legislation, Eric.
The big news is that the Senate and House have passed the $1.5 billion education reform bill. There was some negative response that the Senate had taken out some oversight on the part of the DESE in order to make changes to plans that are supposed to be submitted by any school districts that are needing improvement. That may all come out in the wash, but that was about the most controversial piece of it, other than the funding source and whether there'll have to be other cuts made in other places. But that's where it's at. We can talk more about the final bill once it's passed.
Great. Thank you. Subcommittee liaison updates. Deep's monthly meeting will be next Wednesday, October 16th. At 7:45 at First Ipswich on High Street. And the Deep Wine and Food Tasting, the 21st Annual Wine and Food Tasting, will be taking place on October 24th at the Danversport Yacht Club. Tickets can be purchased at Merchants Liquor Mart or at supportdeep.org. Want to thank everyone for their donations, the restaurants, the businesses, the sponsorships, and we're looking forward to another great year this year. Danvers Cares.
Danvers Cares, we had our meeting this morning, our monthly meeting this morning, and the topic was, not surprisingly, the ban on vaping moratorium, I guess is for 4 months. And just a lot of good discussion among the different aspects of the town, from the police, from the addiction community, from a lot of folks who are trying to understand the ramifications of this ban, what is happening in Danvers as well, compliance with that. So a really good discussion around the latest data, what do we know, what do we not know. And I guess the next survey for students is coming out in the spring, so we will get more information. And there were some questions around, well, how many students in Danvers vape, is it going up or down? And that is every 2 years. That survey is every 2 years, Youth and Risk Behavior Survey, that's what it's called. So that will be happening in the spring, so we will get more data on that. But it is something that we're keeping an eye on for sure.
Is there going to be a community presentation on that? Do you know? Is Danvers Cares doing? It was one of their speaker series going to be on that.
That's a good question. I don't know.
I thought I heard that.
The committee hasn't met yet.
Oh, okay.
So they will be meeting, I believe, this month, and then they'll be putting that together. So
Okay, that would be great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
CPAC.
we're all set. So the basic rights. We did meet with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee also, that we'll talk about shortly. The basic rights for parents is coming up in November, so we'll continue to post that.
Great. Policy.
And policy, we didn't meet this month, but we'll be getting back to our work shortly.
Great. Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee.
We've actually met twice. There was a regular committee meeting, and from our standpoint, they are. I talked to them about our focus on social and emotional learning, and they're very excited about that, and asked me to convey to the superintendent that they would like to find ways to support that if they could. And then we had a meeting with school personnel, superintendent, the assistant superintendents, myself, and the DHR and IC to talk about planning for the Martin Luther King event in January, and lots of good ideas exchanged. I'm interested in trying to figure out who would be, looking for speakers is always a challenge, and the rest of it was primarily the logistics of putting it together. It sounds like it'll, as always, be a really respectful and fun event, and we're hoping to include a lot of the Danvers music program. So that was kind of the focus of our group meeting last Friday.
Great. Thank you. Minutes.
I move to approve and release the minutes from the September 9th, 2019 regular meeting.
Is there a
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The meetings have passed. Budget and donations.
So you have 3 reports tonight. I know Arthur always likes that I take the month of September off, so this makes up for it. The first is the final budget report. You'll see that we finished the year with a positive balance of approximately $190,000. $40,000 was from a positive surplus from operations, and then $40,000 was from the school resource officer, which the police department was able to fund, and then $110,000 was the money we discussed last year to help cover townwide budget challenges and make sure we were in a good financial position for the Smith School.
Great.
So this left us with healthy balances in our circuit breaker reserve and other accounts while contributing to the town's overall budget picture. Budget transfers report. So from the time that we set our budget in February through where we start the school year, we always see a series of changes. So you'll see that we did end up needing to add a net of 3 additional teacher aides. We actually added 5 and then eliminated 2 to be able to restructure. So we look at special education service delivery. We decided that we'd be better off hiring 2 behavioral technicians for the district for the year rather than a traditional aide. So it's somebody that has more training in ABA services but is not quite a BCBA tech, but to really be able to dive into some of the social emotional learning. So we're piloting that at the Smith School as potentially a model for future years. So that was a change that happened. And then you'll see that we did do, to help with state reporting and kind of just better presentation and account restructure around our central office principals and coordinators and directors were all kind of in separate accounts. They've been rolled into one account number, and then we moved the administrative assistant support for those positions up in the chart of accounts to be aligned with those positions rather than being separated. So you'll see that's I think one of the first changes that we've done in a number of years to this overall chart, just to make it more efficient. And then you have your September monthly budget report. We are on budget at the moment. We continue to look at special education as we start the year and what our tuition outline looks like through all of that, and then how we continue to support our learning centers in the district. So there may be changes to come in the future, but we're still in the process of looking after the first month of school at how we're best supporting all students.
Right.
And then I do have donations. I'll pause if there's questions about the reports first before I just
Any
keep
questions?
rambling.
Eric?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Joe?
No.
Dave?
I'm good.
Arthur?
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith.
So we do have 2 donations that we just want to recognize. Title Boxing Club in Danvers was able to donate 25 backpacks with school supplies inside. So we were able to send 5 to each elementary school to help students in need at the start of the year.
Nice.
And then also to thank the TD Club, who made a donation of $1,000 to help cover new sleds for the football team, as well as an end zone camera to help record and so that they can watch their practices more efficiently.
They're 4-0. Do they really need that much help?
Why they're 4-0 is the great equipment that they now have to be
Outstanding,
state of
great.
the art. So we thank both of those groups for their
That's great.
support.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, personnel.
Here's your monthly personnel report for the month of really the changes in September. So you'll see 1 resignation and then 3 appointments. We do want to wish Sherry Howard, the secretary, the administrative assistant here in the guidance department at the high school, a happy and healthy retirement. Her last day was September 22nd, I believe. So she is now retired, and then you'll see some changes that came about that with some administrative assistants moving positions and then some new ones starting with us.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for personnel?
No.
Everyone else set? Great. Thank you, Keith. All right, so our next meeting, Or wait, is there anything else? Anyone have anything this evening?
Nothing
No?
else.
Great, thank you. Diane, our next meeting?
November 4th.
November 4th. All right, so I think
Would like
that's
to make a motion
One
to
question
adjourn.
before we move to
Yeah.
adjourn.
Oh.
If you mentioned it, forgive me, but the deep wine tasting is,
October 24th. I have tickets if anyone wants them tonight. All right, there was a motion. Was there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Good night, Danvers. Thank you.
Thank you.
First Monday.